Welcome to this impromptu episode of the Site-65 podcast. I'm your host, Robert Tomato Peterson, and with me, as always, is Keegan. Keegan, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Good, good. We have a special guest at the table today. Site Inspector Lincoln.
Hello.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be talking to you and having you here.
Finally gonna talk
It,
to one, huh?
yeah, it's
Easy.
very rare we get to interact with site inspectors and have long conversations with them, and even though we don't have that much time, we only have about 10-15 minutes. It's really nice of you to take the time to sit down and talk to us. Well, me, former research, who still gets access to the site to come play with 999, and senior researcher Keegan. So it's really nice of you to join us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank
Heard
you.
a lot about your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot. So typically we ask people on the podcast who are new, how they got into the foundation, and how they got to the position they're in, and then what's the craziest thing they've seen at the foundation, specifically Site-65, so far in their career. Now, you being a site inspector, you're way above our clearance level. It's odd that you're even taking the time to talk to us, but we still appreciate it. So, we know you can't give us all the details on everything, but if you don't mind me asking, how did you end up here at Site-65?
Well, I can't go into the details of how I ended up here. You could say it was a string of fate, really. I was studying in college originally, a long time ago. I can't say the subject or much information about it, but it eventually led to me being recruited by the foundation. And then from there, where I was recruited into the specific program, things led to one another, and I ended up here where I am now.
Well, damn.
Hmm.
That's something I aspire to be in the foundation one day, is hopefully, site inspector. I know it's not as easy as just, hey, you're getting promoted today. And I know there's a lot of complicatedness behind it. But it's fascinating to talk to you because you have insight. We know that you have insight into stuff that me and Keegan have no idea about. And we're not going to ask you about that because we know you can't tell us.
Yeah.
But surely in your time in the foundation, you've probably seen some crazy stuff. And if need be, I can go back and redact it from this podcast, as I've done before. But if you don't mind me asking, what is something you've seen in the foundation that has been crazy or weird or just out of the everyday norm that you typically see? Something memorable.
I had this executive researcher come up to me with a test one time. They wanted to put SCP-096 through SCP-914.
That was me.
Was it?
Yes, I did that test.
How'd it go?
So we put 096 through. We bucketed him and put him through the machine on rough. And
I believe he came out as a non-cognito hazard.
He did, yes. It was very shocking. He was just I shouldn't say normal guy. He was 096, but we tested with the D class, and the D class looking at him didn't trigger any reaction. So we were initially like, oh my god, we've done it. We've gotten rid of the cognito hazard that is 096. However, over time, we noticed that 096, we tested over a period of days. Every time someone looked at 096, he would increasingly get more and more upset slowly over time. And eventually, we sent in a D class to look at him, and 096 just snapped back to his normal thought patterns, I guess you could call it, and destroyed the D class. So I don't remember talking to you about that site inspector, but
I was there.
You just didn't know it.
Yeah,
That was
I
spooky.
would assume
I
you're.
do also have security footage of it.
Ooh, I wish I could see that, but at the same time, I was there, so that'd be fascinating to see again.
If
But then
you'd
again, it's
like to know,
probably
the footage from whenever he wasn't a cognito hazard also still does not trigger him.
really.
Oh, that's cool. Good research right there. Study
Well,
that.
damn, I did not realize that. Oh
We
wow.
use it. We now use it as a false way to threaten people.
Oh, I like that. So another thing I want to ask is have you had any interesting interactions? Because we've had uh, both GOC and CI hack into our comms and be guests on the podcast in the past. Keep in mind, this podcast is only listened to by people on Site-65 and other sites. Hopefully, no one has spread it around the internet, so people are listening to this. But
They haven't.
oh, wonderful! Thank you.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, we're happy to hear that. But just out of curiosity, have you had any odd interactions with the GOC or CI, specifically at Site-65, or any interactions in the town of Pinewood? I know you probably aren't allowed. Well, I can't say you're not allowed to, but you are obviously a more priority target, if you would, to someone like a CI or a GOC. So, have you had any interactions with them? And if so, what have they been?
I've had some interactions with GOC recently at Site-65.
Oh, really? Anything you're able to talk about, or is it all
The
strictly
the
keep under
GOC
wraps?
general for that specific embassy, we were trying to create, we try and do better relations for a little bit.
I always like.
Due
I always
to
want to speak to the research team, so that'd be
due
nice.
to some complicated, you could say, scenarios that went down, the embassy ended up being closed not long after opening.
Oh,
No, that's a shame.
swear to God,
But
I'll meet their research team one day.
Keegan's always going on about the GOC research team. He really wants to meet them. Maybe if Keegan gets executive, which I know you applied for, I heard about
Yeah.
that. I don't tell anyone. I put in a good word for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, Mr. Site Inspector, I have to ask, what's your opinion on the research department as a whole? Do you think we do good work? Do you think there's areas we could improve? I know we have some wacky tests that you occasionally probably have heard about, other than my 096 914 test. But what's your opinion on the research department?
I think you do what you're expected.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I was expecting there, but that's a pretty good answer. So we're gonna, since you're obviously a very busy man, we're gonna wrap this up, and we're not gonna take up too much of your time because.
I can stay for 10 more minutes.
Oh, you can? Oh, awesome.
Fantastic.
Okay, I didn't know.
I don't
The
have a
perfect
meeting
time.
for another 30 minutes.
I was gonna ask
Okay.
you, is it okay if I take an IA's dead body and make Inspector Gadget? It's a weird question, but I wanted to do this for a long time. Tomato, come on.
No, look. I get it. You have talked about this before, but at the same time, why use a dead body? We have D class.
I mean, IA agents are more, how do I say, working people of society.
You can
I don't
speak
want
to
to
an
declass.
you can speak to an ethics member about that.
I mean, they're definitely gonna say no, but if I have an inspector on it, I'll get easier passage.
I appreciate the call to ask the site inspector directly about it. That's. I mean, I wouldn't have the balls to do that. I just kind of passed my when I was full on research. I just passed my documents up the chain of command, and eventually they got back to me, signed or not signed. So I either had approval or I didn't. But to ask them directly, that's pretty intense.
Let's continue with the questions. I didn't come here for silly questions.
Okay, fair enough. So typically we'd like to talk about news stories because, as we know, Site-65 has a sort of newspaper news articles that are written each day by janitorial, and they're published throughout the site, and they just talk about what's going on in the site. They keep everyone up to date on other departments' doings. So I picked out two news stories that I think are interesting that maybe you could weigh in on, Mr. Site Inspector, if that's okay.
I was looking at my email. Could you repeat that?
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So as we know, there's a daily sort of newsletter published about dealings that go on around the site. And I've been doing this for the past couple episodes. I like to pick a few news stories out of the news pamphlet and kind of talk about them on the podcast. Just kind of get everyone's opinion on them.
I haven't read the newspaper.
Yeah, it's kind of keep us in the know of what other departments are doing, and I don't know if it goes to higher clearance level than clearance level 4 because you guys should obviously know more than we do, and you probably don't want to trivialize yourselves with stuff like janitorial gets new mops and stuff like that. But there were two news stories that I picked out that I thought were interesting. The first one is there's been rumors around the site that D-Class, we have roughly, at any given time, about 100 of them on site. Kept in their cells, kept in D-Lock. We've heard rumors that that's going to be updated to roughly 250 to 300. Any comments on that? Is there any details you can give us? Because that's a lot more D-Class than we typically have, and that could lead to a lot more breaches.
I don't really have much to say on it. I don't really pay attention to a lot of that stuff.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. And finally, there's been plenty of rumors going around that there are going to be new SCPs brought to Site-65 soon. Transferred over from other sites, obviously, some taken from their natural habitats. But we don't know much details on those SCPs. Now, for those of you who are listening, if this is true, you can request transfer to Site-65 to come and test on these SCPs. But in the meantime, I have to ask, Mr. Site Inspector, are there any thoughts you have, any details you can give us on these new SCPs? Any thoughts, any opinions, anything at all? Because especially us in the research department, we're very interested to know what these anomalies are and if they're going to be something we can test on, if it's going to be something that's just going to reside here. Anything at all you can give us.
I can say that if you are a big fan of space, you'll like one of them.
I like that
Interesting.
response.
Yes, and again, I understand you can't really give us a lot of details, but at the same time, thank you. That does help quite a bit. So this is where I would normally end off the episode because we've talked about news stories, we've talked about experiences with the site. But Mr. Site Inspector, I just want to say a couple things. One, thank you for all you do. Me and Keegan would both like to express our gratitude for your continued service to the Foundation, even though it's not really our job to say that. We're not exactly your boss. But at the same time, we know that what you do is well beyond the capabilities of me or Keegan or any of the research department. So we would like to say, on behalf of all of us, thank you for what you do. But I want to open up the floor to you. If there's anything you would like to say to anyone listening, and this will be broadcast to all other sites for every department except D-Class, they have the opportunity to listen to you. Is there anything you want to say to the people listening?
I believe there was some I would. What?
Oh, someone's just walking by.
Unfortunately, my assistant tells me that my meeting is soon. I have to go.
Oh, well, darn. Well,
you so
that's
much.
okay. First
I
off,
will
just,
leave with one message though.
Okay.
Keep doing your jobs. Keeping humanity safe is mainly what we're here for. Of course, there are sacrifices. You just have to deal with them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for stopping by, Mr. Site Inspector. This has been the Site-65 podcast impromptu episode. I've been your host, Robert Tomato Peterson, along with senior researcher Keegan. Thank you all very much for listening.